Next issue is, as I told you before, the people who are engaging in fraudulent transfers are typically not the nicest people that you're going to deal with. In fact, I would go so far as to call them scumbags. And believe me, I deal with a lot of them. They don't tell the truth. They don't have very high regard for the rules. And if somebody is willing to flout the system and try and game the system in litigation, chances are you're not going to get them to come clean and say, you know what, counselor, I did intend to defraud your client. I did intend to impair his or her or its rights to collect, and I'm proud of that. It happens once in a while, but not very often. So what we have for fraud in fact claims is we've got something called badges of fraud. And this comes right out of that statute of Queen Elizabeth I that we were talking about that was enacted sometime in the 1570s. Now you're probably going to have to squint to read these badges of fraud. They're in the materials that I've got. And these are actually Section 5B of the Illinois Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act, where it gives you a non-exclusive list of 11 factors the court can consider to determine whether or not a transfer was fraudulent in fact. And interestingly enough, for the most part, most fraudulent transfer litigation occurred in the U.S. bankruptcy courts, because this was typically a large part of what bankruptcy trustees would do, is they try and claw back assets and get them into the estate. That's not going to happen so much anymore. There was some litigation. It's a long story, but anybody remember the name Anna Nicole Smith? There was a case called Stern versus Marshall. Her actual legal name was Vicki Lynn Marshall. As a result of a Supreme Court decision in that case, it doesn't look like U.S. bankruptcy courts are going to be doing the bulk of fraudulent transfer litigation anymore. But in any event, most of the bankruptcy courts would usually require 3 or 4 badges of fraud to be present in order to find fraud in fact. There were a couple of cases that went down as low as 2, but that was typically the bare minimum.